Thank you very much. So we have a session coming up, and I just want to quickly, I know his bio is in the book, but good friend Peter Fitzgerald, who is the president of Google Japan. Prior to Japan, you lived in London with Google, and prior to Google, you also worked with Amazon. You have a long, distinguished career in the field of, I guess, e-commerce, digital marketing. Mr. Digital is Peter. Our conversation today is going to be focused on AI and solving problems with AI for everyone. And when I think about that title, something doesn't quite sit right with me because I'm definitely not a techie. My kids think I'm a Luddite when it comes to tech, because I am. And just the whole concept of artificial intelligence, I know from a lot of people I know, evokes a lot of different, a range of emotions, right? On the one hand, you've got, the estimate that because of all the productivity and efficiency gains you can get from AI and machine learning, that could boost GDP by something like $17 trillion US, which is almost one America, right? Wow. Huge benefits over time. Conversely, you have other sort of less maybe optimistic opinions or reactions. Oh, but isn't AI going to take over half our jobs or more, like the job killer? And I know that Son-san of SoftBank has been quoted, I've seen in the press, that he thinks he's such a believer in AI that he thinks that AI robots are essentially going to outsmart humans by 2030 or something like that, which is why he's spending a lot of his time and energy in the field. So the range of kind of reactions or emotional responses towards the subject is obviously very vast. So this conversation we're going to have with Peter is really focused on, so what is AI? How can it be helpful? What are the benefits of it, not just for people in very specific areas of technology, but for people in this room, for instance. So when we just kick it off, and maybe you can just talk through a little bit about, first I think about the product side and how that it can improve the use of products.
Sure. I may use a few slides too, just to frame this. So on the first area on how to make AI accessible to everyone, we focused on how to make our products more useful. One example is Google Photos. It's very hard often to find your photos, so making it searchable through AI is super nice when you can just put sunset, and I just see photos of my boys in Vietnam with me, or my good friend Mark when we went down south to an island in Japan. So that's one example through classification. But in new areas, this is an example through just pointing your camera, and you can see, there's a meatball restaurant. It can give you review information. In some instances, it can allow you just to book that seat right then. So how do you make it easier for people to browse the world just using other devices? And AI is right behind it. And it's true for Google Assistant, it's true for Translate, it's true for almost every one of our 8 products that reach 1 billion people. So that's the first area that we spend a lot of time, and we've shifted our whole strategy to be AI first, and also make it accessible to everyone. So
if I ended up in, I don't know, a foreign country where I didn't speak the language, and I just show my phone at the restaurants that I don't know how to read, it will tell me which ones are the good ones.
That's right. That's true, and it could also quickly translate in front of your very eyes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we have technology that will take an input, say it was in Japanese for me because I'm still learning, and then immediately on my phone it will show in English that that's an exit sign, say if I'm at the airport. So mm-hmm. I use that quite a bit here.
Okay. And as I said at the outset, of course, one of the big pluses or positive gains from AI and machine learning over time is, particularly for a country like Japan, which is facing clearly a demographic crisis as we speak, is the potential productivity enhancements. And I know you've got some companies you've worked with in Japan, and how have they kind of incorporated AI, and how's that helped their business?
Yeah, that's the second area we're really focused on, is how can you help others innovate? And one example is with fast retailing. We've been honored to support them in their project Ariake, which is to really transform retailing with all the changes with technology, globalization. They have a big vision for how they can radically improve processes, if it's their supply chain, use customer feedback to change how they do demand forecasting using AI. So that's something we've been working on, and you can get really fast results. And then probably more profound than finding the efficiencies with process is how it can actually change culture, how it can make everyone in all the stores entrepreneurs. They can use their judgment, their logic, their empathy, and start to really be decision makers, communicating very closely with managers from all over the world or here in Tokyo. So it's been wonderful to be a part of that. Advanced Solution Labs are just our team of AI experts, machine learning experts, and Uniqlo was the first retailer in Japan to use this, but we have it in Tokyo. We have training sessions coming up through it, and G Suite are just sharing tools, Gmail, sharing docs.
Right, right. You also gave me an example when we were prepping for this. You work with cucumber farmers.
Yes.
So tell us about how you work with agriculture.
It was one of the first examples. So what we did is we essentially made our machine learning framework available to everyone through TensorFlow. And
sorry, what's TensorFlow?
Yeah, TensorFlow is basically it's like a toolkit that you can use. In the instance of the cucumber farmer family, one of the individuals was a former engineer, and he was going to leave his job to go help his family run their cucumber business. So he downloaded TensorFlow, studied it, and realized that his family spent a lot of time sorting cucumbers, because the size, the shape really depends on the price that you get.
Because as you all know, you can only sell straight cucumbers in Japan, nothing else.
That's right, perfectly straight. And so for relatively no money, a conveyor belt, and using vision technology, it would automatically sort the cucumbers into these boxes. And to your earlier point about what does that mean that someone would lose their job, actually they're doing work that's much more interesting and helpful to their business. And we've seen this with other companies like QP that now use AI to find blemished potatoes. They had 60 or 70 people working this line, just finding blemished potatoes. Now all of those people are doing much more interesting and helpful work to the business.
Great. And then, of course, for Japan, where the demographics are as they are, there's a lot of challenges, for example, in the area of healthcare, even though, of course, Japan enjoys very long longevity on a relative basis. How can AI be applied, for example, in this area of healthcare? I know the governor's panel that Dr. Okimoto just conducted, they touched a little bit about this on this subject, but from your perspective, how is this helping?
Yes, so the third area of focus is how do you give researchers tools to really solve some of the biggest issues or challenges. And in healthcare, machine learning can be really useful if you have a lot of data that you have to sort through. And the amount of data is just exploding that radiologists, for example, have to work through. And so on the right, what you see here is the yellow line is the ideal number of radiologists to people in a country. And in the middle there, you see Japan already has a shortage. So there's already too much demand for the specialty of radiology. So we're seeing with chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes increasing, that this problem is only getting worse. So diabetic retinopathy, how is it diagnosed? Camera takes a picture of your eye, and then an expert looks at it. On the top, that's healthy. On the bottom, not healthy. Why? Because there's a little bleed. But the doctor has to be able to see that little hemorrhage, and it's very difficult often to see. So we started testing, again, using, say, thousands of images that this machine learning system would look at, and then asking it to make a determination. Is this a problem or is it not a problem? And in the top section there of the left, that's ophthalmologists doing a great job, high rate of success on diagnosing if this is really a problem or not. And back in 2016, when we trialed this, we were generally as good as a generalist eye doctor. And what we saw within a couple of years is we were getting on par or even better than ophthalmologists. So think of the ramifications in an area like India, et cetera, where there's over There's millions of people that have this, hundreds of millions, in fact, in the world, but many don't have access to specialists. And then finally, beyond ophthalmology, pathology, you have to look through lots of slides. We're finding that AI can point specialists where to look and spend more time, ignoring the things they don't have to look at, radiology, dermatology, all these other areas where, AI can be super helpful.
And so beyond these applications, so to speak, at the kind of micro level, for businesses, farmers, applying it in, for example, in a patient setting, what else do you think AI can be applied to in a much bigger sense for society at large, communities in that arena?
We've thought a little bit about AI for social good, and there's early signs that this can be very powerful. For example, with detecting illegal fishing. It often happens at night. AI can be super helpful. The flood prediction. We're working now to be better at just giving SOS alerts, bringing services that can really make a difference in saving lives and reducing the economic impact. And it's the same with predicting famine. And I think into the future, in predicting earthquakes, forest fires, it can be very effective.
Okay, we're running quickly out of time here, so just maybe one last question, Peter. So you've been in Japan with Google, you've obviously lived in Europe with Google. We talk a lot at the US-Japan Council about, we know the obvious dilemma, the challenge that faces Japan with the demography and with the lack of productivity, and people say, but Japanese people don't want to take risks because they don't want to fail. What is your own personal experience running Google in Japan and talking with your customers? Is there a sense of urgency, or is it just a few companies going at it and other companies really in the dark? What's your take?
Well, I think, as we heard from Mike-san before, embracing fintech as an enabler versus a disruption to avoid or to try to slow down. I think it's really exciting to see more and more business leaders leaning into this idea. And so, we've been here since we were 3 years old. It was the first place we came into, and it's so important still in kind of allowing us to see ahead from a technology standpoint. So I'm actually really bullish on Japan because I think there's a lot of great know-how, and with further training in AI, or in, like you said, a little bit more risk-taking, trial and error, because a lot of the digital world is about how do you come up with smart hypotheses, test many of them. 19 out of 20 will not work, but the one that does, then being able to really scale it. I'm really confident that as more and more businesses start to just learn through trial and error, that we're going to see great innovation over the coming years. And part of it is because of the necessity. We have to solve these big problems first in Japan.
They're not going to go away. And Japan
Correct.
may be a template for the rest of the developed world.
That's absolutely right.
Well, we could go on for 3 hours, but my clock is ticked down. So thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.